Allen Company, 47 years young and a proud sponsor, wishes OOIDA all the best as you celebrate 50 years.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
It's the 117th anniversary of the law that allows the president to create national monuments. And this is Landline Now. The American Transportation Research Institute has released its research priorities for 2023. Landline Now's Ashley Blackford recently spoke with ATRI to find out more about these topics and how drivers can help with the research. The Motor Carrier Safety Advisory Committee, or MCSAC, is meeting, discussing topics that could have a direct impact on your life and your business. I'll find out what topics are on the agenda from OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. And finally, OOIDA has many tools it uses to influence what happens in Washington, D.C. on behalf of truckers, and one of those is its PAC. As part of our ongoing coverage of the association's 50th anniversary, I'll discuss the PAC with OOIDA Chief of Staff Angel Burnell and Jay Grimes. But first, today's headlines. President Biden's pick for Labor Secretary faces more tough questions about AB 5. The comment period for a possible underride mandate has been extended, and we'll tell you which state has just extended an emergency order for fuel haulers and why. And now, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today, Julie Su in the hot seat. President Biden's pick to serve as Labor Secretary appeared before the House Committee on Education and the Workforce on Wednesday. Su was there to defend her department's budget request for fiscal year 2024, but several exchanges exposed the difficult road she faces toward confirmation. California's controversial AB 5 law was front and center several times at the hearing. Su was California's labor commissioner when the worker classification law went into effect and was tasked with implementing it. Representative Kevin Kiley of California asked Su several questions about AB 5 at the hearing. Here is one of those exchanges. We'll let it play out.
Right, but that's not what I asked. What I asked was, do you think AB 5 is a good law?
I don't know what, I mean, I don't know. Tell me what, give me a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Do you think it was a good law for the state? Is it good that it passed?
I think that, when AB 5 was first signed, one of the things that I did in my role as Labor Secretary in California was we reached out to employers and worked with.
My timing is running out. I just want to give you one last chance, Acting Secretary Su. Is AB 5 a good law, yes or no?
I think it's an important role of the government to help employers to comply with laws that are passed by the legislature.
Is AB 5 a good law?
But also it's important to enforce laws that are passed.
Su also reiterated during the hearing she would not pursue an AB 5 model on the national level if confirmed as Labor Secretary. But that hasn't been enough to placate various trucking groups, including OOIDA, which calls AB 5, quote, the most disruptive worker classification policy to be enacted anywhere at the state or federal level, end quote. Su also faces other concerns, including about employment fraud that took place when she was Labor Commissioner of California. Wednesday's hearing was in the House, but Su's fate lies in the Senate, where she may not have enough votes to be confirmed. Her nomination passed out of committee in April, but has yet to be taken up by the full Senate. The Congressional Review Act that would nullify the EPA's strict new emission standards for heavy trucks has landed on President Biden's desk. Starting Wednesday, the president has 10 days to veto it and expect that to happen. The White House has already said that President Biden would veto any attempt to override the new standards. Standards, the White House says, will prevent hundreds of premature deaths, thousands of childhood asthma cases, and millions of lost school days every year. The new EPA emission standards require heavy-duty and medium-duty vehicles starting with model year 2027 to meet lower emissions goals. If President Biden does break out the veto pen, it would be just the third veto since he took office. The resolution first passed the Senate in April and then the House 1 month later. The public has been given an extra month to give feedback on NHTSA's proposed rule on side underride guards for tractor trailers. The comment period for the advance notice of proposed rulemaking has been extended through July 20th. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is considering a rule that would require side underride guards on trailers and semi-trailers as a means of reducing deadly crashes. As of this morning, about 100 comments had been submitted to the Federal Register. NHTSA is expected to use those comments to help determine whether to move forward with a formal proposal. In 2019, the U.S. Government Accountability Office issued a 46-page report on truck underride guards, which said that less than 1% of the total number of traffic fatalities from 2008 through 2017 involved underride crashes. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association is opposed to any attempt at a mandate, calling it costly and impractical. Jay Grimes, OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, says NHTSA's own cost-benefit analysis doesn't pass the smell test.
And they also mentioned that the analysis did not include any operational or practical impacts that we've kind of discussed, looking at side underrides, at loading dock operations, and what the effect would be on freight capacity. Did not take into consideration modifications to infrastructure, maintenance, and practicability and feasibility of intermodal operations for trailers equipped with side underride guards. One of the things that we hear from drivers, if this equipment would be mandated, is getting over rail crossings and perhaps getting stuck, difficulties getting in and out of loading facilities with this equipment on the truck. So that a lot of those practical and operational considerations were not taken into account in this initial research.
To be clear, no rule has been proposed yet. This advance notice is related to NHTSA's research on the matter, which puts the total cost of a possible side underride mandate at $1.2 billion. The International Brotherhood of Teamsters and ABF Freight have reached a tentative deal on a new 5-year national contract. The two sides announced a deal on Wednesday night. It calls for wage increases, improved benefits, and better working conditions for about 8,600 drivers, dock workers, and others. The agreement comes after 97% of Teamsters members who work for ABF voted in favor of a strike if necessary. The Teamsters are set to review the deal next week and then send it to members for a ratification vote. A new survey is putting numbers to the way drivers are feeling about the current state of affairs in the trucking industry. It comes from the Conversion Interactive Agency and People Data Analytics, and there are a number of takeaways. The spring 2023 driver survey says the number of people seeking driving jobs has gone down 6 percentage points compared to the survey done last fall, down to 33%. And nearly 45% of the drivers surveyed said they aren't certain their carrier will be able to provide enough miles for them to earn the pay they need. The results are based on the responses of more than 1,600 truckers. The state of Nebraska is easing back on regulations for fuel haulers. It's due to fuel shortages in the region. Nebraska's governor issuing an executive order that relaxes hours of service regulations for truck drivers hauling gasoline, diesel, propane, and other fuels. Drivers operating under the waiver are required to carry a copy of the executive order with them. The emergency order is scheduled to remain in effect until September 4th. And finally, Schneider National has finished an electric charging depot at its South El Monte Intermodal Operations Center in Los Angeles. In a news release, Schneider said the depot will power the company's battery electric truck fleet, which will include nearly 100 Freightliner e-Cascadias by the end of this year. The charging site is over half the size of a football field and can charge 32 trucks simultaneously. The e-Cascadias will be able to achieve an 80% charge within 90 minutes. And that's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. You can write a letter to your elected officials in Congress or look up contact information for lawmakers who represent you on the state and federal level by using the website fightingfortruckers.com. Again, that website, fightingfortruckers.com. Next, Ashley Blackford reports on ATRI's research priorities for 2023. I'll find out what MCSAC discussed at its meeting this week from OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs Jay Grimes, and we'll hear about OOIDA's PAC from OOIDA Chief of Staff Angel Burnell and Jay Grimes. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Firestone tires are for more of everything. More miles for every tire dollar, and more confidence in your fleet. At Firestone, we help fleets save with dependable value. Find your local Firestone dealer today at firestonetire.com/dealer.
Every make, every model, in every corner of the country. Technical smarts and quality parts. That's how we roll. Bring your rig into TA Truck Service.
Landline Now, welcome back. The American Transportation Research Institute has released its research priorities for the year. To discuss those, Rebecca Brewster joins me. She is President and Chief Operating Officer of ATRI. Rebecca, can you start out by telling me more about the Institute?
We are at birth. ATRI is the trucking industry's not-for-profit research organization, and we have one primary mission, and that's to do the research and provide the data and analysis to improve the trucking industry's safety and productivity. And we identify the studies that we undertake utilizing what we call our Research Advisory Committee, and that's an external body at ATRI that is comprised of trucking industry representatives covering the full continuum of the industry. So we have trucking fleet representatives from large fleets and small fleets. We have professional drivers represented on the RAC through both a staff person at OOIDA as well as a truck driver who is a Teamster. So we have OOIDA and the Teamsters represented. We have law enforcement. We have academia. We have a federal government, a state DOT, and a metropolitan planning organization. We have truck stop operators, industry suppliers. So it really is a very diverse group of trucking industry stakeholders who each year get together. They review, typically in a typical cycle, 25 to 30 different research proposals that have been developed by our staff working with the RAC members. They talk about the merits of each of those research proposals from their perspective, and at the end of the process, they vote to come up with typically a list of the top 5 or 6 priorities that ATRI will then pursue over the course of the next year.
Can you walk me through each of those topics, those research priorities for 2023, and what the priorities are for each?
Absolutely. So the number one priority identified for 2023 is looking to expand truck parking at public rest areas. So we know from our annual top industry issues survey that professional drivers rank the lack of available truck parking as their top concern. Our Research Advisory Committee is very aware of this. And this particular study is to look at what can we do on the public sector side, or what can be done on the public sector side to increase the availability of parking at public rest areas. We know from earlier truck parking research we did a number of years ago, utilizing truck parking diaries, that female professional drivers stated a preference for parking at public rest areas. So as we look to bring more women into the industry, that's another consideration. So this research idea actually generated from one of our RAC members who was aware of a location that his family had owned farmland on I-5 in Oregon, and the state came in, needed that land for a public rest area, and so they sold the land to the state. Well, it turns out the rest area only took up a certain footprint, whereas the actual land they sold them was much more. And so he said, this is a low-hanging fruit situation that is probably prevalent in other states where there is available land that the state is already in possession of. They've already got the facilities there. They've built the restrooms and have the lighting in place, and really all that's needed is additional paving to provide additional truck parking. So that's one approach. The second one is to look at some states that are doing and taking some unique approaches to providing additional parking, like opening up their way stations their permanent way stations for overnight parking, or providing additional capacity for drivers, even if it's without a facility, but just a place where drivers can pull in and rest. And then the last one is really to look at what are states doing that is constricting that truck parking capacity. And the primary issue there is states that limit the amount of time you can be in a public rest area. So it's posted at, no more than 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. Well, none of those time blocks works for professional drivers who have to get their mandated rest. And so identifying through some case studies where states can, expand what they already have available in terms of rest area parking, looking at some case studies where states are doing some unique things to provide additional capacity on public sector-owned land, and then looking at some strategies to maybe reduce those limitations on how long drivers can be at those public rest areas. The next one is identifying barriers to entry for female truck drivers. So we know through our crash predictor model that there is a strong safety rationale for why we want more female drivers in the industry. But there are some challenges for why females might not see this as an ideal career choice. And one of those right off the bat is the one we just talked about, is the lack of available truck parking. And so our research advisory committee said, female drivers represent less than 10% of the workforce. Let's figure out how we can increase that number. And so we're going to talk to women who are currently in the industry, as well as those who have left the industry, to identify what are the things that motivated women to come in, and what are those sort of challenges, things that maybe they decided this wasn't the career path for them, so that we can better inform the industry overall. These are the issues you need to address to make this a career path more attractive to females. The third topic is an interesting one. It's one that's actually been raised at our research advisory committee for several years now, but it is getting heightened attention, and that is the U.S. DOT has a program they call Complete Streets, and it's really focused on making transportation accessible for everyone, so expanding pedestrian walkways and bikeways and increasing transit availability. And those are all admirable goals, but the challenge is that oftentimes these programs don't take into consideration the impact on freight. And so at the sort of the extreme end of it is cities and state DOTs that are considering closing parts of interstate routes to turn them into pedestrian malls or other features as part of this Complete Streets program. And obviously that's going to have an impact on freight mobility. Other issues, when bike lanes are put in and they cut down on the regular lane, the travel lane width, that creates a situation for the trucking industry, because obviously we're the largest in terms of size users of those lanes, and it does create the opportunity for more conflict between bicyclists and trucks. And so just highlighting for the public sector, and the research is really intended to inform the public sector, what are the impacts on freight mobility and the freight community, who they rely on to deliver everything for these areas. What is the impact of these transportation planning decisions to transfer transportation infrastructure over to pedestrians and bicyclists? The next one is examining the diesel technician shortage. There are many in the industry who believe that this is one of our greatest workforce challenges, because while we certainly need more drivers in the industry, we need people to maintain the equipment we have. And understanding why do people choose a path as a diesel technician? What do they like about it? What don't they like about it? What keeps them here? Following very much a methodology we used in a study we released last year, looking at how to make the industry more attractive to young people looking for new careers. So in that, we talked to younger drivers under 25, what attracted them to the industry, what did they think of the training they received, and what is going to keep them here. We're going to follow a similar methodology looking at diesel technicians, because it is such a critical workforce need. And then the last one, our last priority for 2023, is looking at the cost of driver detention. So we know that the lack of available truck parking is a top issue for drivers, but we also know that they continually rank detention at customer facilities as a top concern in the industry. And it impacts not only those drivers, but it impacts the fleets that they drive for as well, because there are missed appointments as a result of that detention. And so really starting to quantify what that cost is to the industry, and really highlighting this for the larger supply chain, because at the end of the day, this is a problem that needs to be fixed on the other side, and that's the shippers and the customers. And so really pinpointing what is the cost of detention, what does it mean for our workforce, what does it mean for the efficiency of the supply chain, so that we can really start to identify strategies to minimize detention.
And can you walk me through the timeline of how this research being done, how that all works?
Absolutely. So when the Research Advisory Committee identified these priorities in March, that's a recommendation that then goes to the ATRI board. And so the ATRI board met in May. We presented each of these top priority topics, and they approved these moving forward. And so now we, as a staff, professional staff at ATRI, are starting to sketch out the methodology for these studies and determine who on our staff will do what based on our skill sets and what they need. And so we're going to initially start working on the truck parking at public rest areas, the identifying barriers to entry for female truck drivers, and the complete streets. And so the top three we're going to get started on this summer. And don't know yet the timeline because we haven't fully finalized the methodology, but we are initiating work on those three right away. It's my sense, based on similar studies we've done in the past, that for sure all three of these will be completed within a 12-month cycle. So certainly by the following summer we would have these released. But I think we will likely see a shorter timeline, for instance, on the complete streets and on the truck parking.
And what happens with the research that ATRI does?
So one of the hallmarks of ATRI is we make our research available free of charge to anyone who is interested. And so once we publish the studies, we put them on our website. Anyone who is interested in them can download, oftentimes as an incentive for people to participate in our research, either to participate in a survey or a focus group. We provide those folks with an advanced copy of the study so they get it emailed from me. But anyone can access it. And then the industry is invited to use the studies however they see fit. And that can be anything from educating folks at the fleet you work for about an issue to, at the highest level, seeing ATRI's research show up in congressional testimony. So recently, as folks know, there's a push to move the nation's vehicle fleet to electric vehicles. And we have done quite a bit of research highlighting on one side of the equation the fact that there's so many charging infrastructure challenges with that for the trucking industry, from lack of available parking. You know, if you're going to have to charge on your rest break, you have to have a charger there. And if we don't even have enough parking spaces, what does that mean in terms of what's going to require to charge vehicles? And so we have recently seen in congressional hearings that ATRI's research is being cited by members of Congress when they're looking into these issues.
If someone's listening and they think that they'd like to participate in one of these, how can they go about doing that?
We would welcome participation. So our website is real easy to remember because it's what we do. It's truckingresearch.org. And there are several ways to get involved. One is on our homepage, there's a button where you can push to join ATRI's contact list. And so as we start to push out pieces of these studies looking for involvement from the industry, you'll get an notification, an email notification. ATRI has launched a survey. ATRI is looking for folks to participate in a focus group, whatever the methodology calls for. So that's the best way to stay on top of ATRI's research, is to go to the website, join the contact list. We won't overload you with emails, but it does keep you informed. But another way is just to send us an email at ATRI@trucking.org. Oftentimes, the ideas that we take to our research advisory committee generate from emails we get from listeners on the radio who hear us talking about a topic or who have an idea for new research we haven't considered. And we take those research ideas to our research advisory committee as well.
Now, these research priorities cover, a wide variety. Why is it so important that these topics be researched?
When decisions are made, it's so much better and to make those decisions when you are informed with data. And so that's the role that ATRI fills. We provide the data so that the industry and our elected officials can make decisions about these issues based on data rather than emotion.
For more information, you can visit truckingresearch.org. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
You trust PrePass for more bypasses? Now let PrePass help with tolls. PrePass toll service means lower cost, one invoice for all tolls, and fewer violations. Created by truckers for truckers. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Attention all truckers, Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I want to talk to you about those dreaded tax problems. I know you want to keep on trucking and not even think about them, but let's face it, they're not going away all on their own. You need professional help. I've been helping truckers put their tax problems in the rearview mirror for years. truckers, I can help you too. Call me now for a free consultation at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com. It's like I always say, keep your eyes on the road, I'll keep mine on the IRS. 888-557-4020.
The Motor Carrier Safety Advisory Committee, or MCSAC, is meeting, discussing topics that could have a direct impact on your life and your business. Welcome back to Landline Now. This is Regulatory Roundup, and I'm Mark Reddig. I'm joined, as always, by OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. Jay, how are you doing?
Doing well, Mark. Great to be back.
Well, great to have you with us. Let's start out with this. For folks who aren't familiar, what is MCSAC?
Yeah, this is an advisory committee composed up to about 25 different representatives from across the trucking industry, including motor carriers, trade associations, safety advocate groups, law enforcement, and labor as well. They generally meet once to twice a year with FMCSA leadership, and depending on what's going on with trucking policy, provide different insights and recommendations on all sorts of policies.
What effect do those recommendations have on actual policy? I mean, how influential is MCSAC?
Yeah, this is, I would think, that the most influential advisory committee under FMCSA's jurisdiction at the moment. Of course, we're starting up a couple new ones, too, that are going to be pretty influential as well, with the Women in Trucking Advisory Board and the Truck Leasing Task Force. But this one's been around for quite a while now, going back to 2006. OOIDA President Todd Spencer has served on the committee since its inception, just about, and it really has a lot of different representation and perspectives, and I think it is something that we heard from the administrator this week, something that FMCSA and DOT leadership really values the input from the committee.
One of the topics at this meeting is what's called the National Roadway Safety Strategy. What is that?
So this is an effort from the current administration. It's a DOT's comprehensive approach to significantly reducing serious injuries and deaths on our nation's highways. And this is really an across-the-board DOT effort, not just on the trucking industry, but FMCSA did want to get the committee's feedback on how industry stakeholders can collaborate as part of the National Roadway Safety Strategy effort, and certainly what issues FMCSA, DOT, and other agencies could be prioritizing to help reduce highway traffic fatalities and injuries.
You mentioned the things that they should be prioritizing, and they were tasked with identifying new actions the agency should take to address roadway safety. What are some that the committee discussed at this meeting?
Yeah, so the National Roadway Safety Strategy is kind of broken down in a few different sections: safer vehicles, safer people, safer roads, safer speeds, post-crash care, and kind of really going through each of those areas and coming up with some policies that could be addressed. And kind of one that certainly comes to mind on safer people: better driver training, improved driver training, and not only for the trucking industry through the entry-level driver training regulations that have really just recently gone into effect and making those more robust and comprehensive, but more comprehensive training and education for drivers everywhere, whether that's driver's ed classes in high school, whether that's educational campaigns from DOT, alerting drivers, to buckle up, slow down, be aware of your surroundings. Most notably, get off your phone while you're driving and really try and cut down on this distracted driving epidemic that certainly OOIDA members and professional drivers see on a daily basis when they're interacting with passenger vehicles. So that was a big point of discussion. Another common topic that's come up, again, is expanding truck parking capacity. And you could fit that into a number of these categories, whether that's safer people, safer highways, safer vehicles, to really cut down on the time drivers spend having to look for parking. the hassle and the inefficiencies that creates for drivers and the supply chain as well. Safer roadways, another one that we've talked a lot about, and making sure that congestion areas can be improved to again, those are some dangerous areas where we see passenger vehicles speed up in a quick manner, then are forced to slow down when they hit the congestion. And there's all sorts of bottlenecks around major highways across the country that really need to be addressed. And of course, improving infrastructure, roads and bridges, always going to be helpful in making roads safer and more reliable.
Now, those are all very, very positive things, it sounds like. But it seems as if every time you have a committee get together at FMCSA or the Agency Act, that there are some concerns. Was there anything in the MCSAC discussion that is of concern to truckers?
Certainly. We hear a lot about technology mandates at these committee meetings, and that certainly was brought up in terms of safer vehicles. And some of the technologies that we have seen, whether it's push for speed limiters, automatic emergency braking, this notion of beyond compliance, which awards carriers in their safety score for installing any vehicle technology on their trucks, even if it has nothing to do with safety, are some of the issues that we raise concerns and try and push back on in these committee discussions. We want to make sure that any safety technology, especially ones that DOT and their agencies, FMCSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, these are equipment that they're going to mandate on all vehicles. They've got to work. They've got to be reliable, they've got to be affordable, and they've got to improve safety. And unfortunately, a lot of the times when it comes to these rulemakings, they are pushing forward technologies that haven't gone through that comprehensive testing and haven't been proven to improve highway safety in any fashion. So we're always making the case that if you're going to advance these technologies, they've got to work, they've got to improve highway safety, they've got to reduce crashes. They don't just have to, on paper, sound like they're going to work. They actually have to work.
Another item on the committee's agenda was working on the FMCSA's strategic plan. I'm wondering if you can describe what that strategic plan is and what sorts of things it involves.
Yeah, this is a document that FMCSA has to put out every few years, really kind of discussing their overall priorities and strategic goals. And the next one is due to go into effect beginning in 2024. So FMCSA is looking for feedback from the industry on what items and objectives that they want to focus on. And there was a lot of crossover between these two discussion items. And one of the things that we really wanted to focus on is how is FMCSA reviewing regulations that are on the books that may have been approved in hopes of reducing crashes, reducing injuries, and have been in place for a while, but haven't done that. Over the last decade, we've seen some more restrictive hours of service rules go into place. We've seen some safety technology mandates go into place. And a lot of that has not helped in reducing large truck crashes or large truck crash fatalities. So how does FMCSA go about looking and analyzing whether the rules that they are approving and implementing, what effects they're having on highway safety? And if they're not having the desired effects, why are they still in place? So really having that accountability from DOT and FMCSA is something that should be included in their strategic plan. And a lot of this has to do with incorporating a better quality of data. And that goes across the board in a lot of the analysis and studies that DOT is working on. So that's also going to be a major priority for the next strategic plan too.
Let's move on to another topic here. OOIDA wants the Automated Vehicle Transparency and Engagement for Safe Testing Initiative, which is a mouthful, to be mandatory rather than voluntary. And of course, the first question is, what is the Automated Vehicle Transparency and Engagement for Safe Testing Initiative?
Yeah.
I bet you can say it in fewer words than that.
AV test is basically the shorthand name for it. And this is a NHTSA sort of initiative and database that's designed to provide more accessible information to the public about autonomous vehicle testing and development. It's also supposed to bring in information from different states regarding activity, legislation, and different regulations on what's going on within the states and how they're testing and deploying autonomous vehicles. The problem here, and those goals are, sound great. We're supportive of them. The problem is that this AV test initiative is completely voluntary. So you're not getting buy-in from all the AV developers and manufacturers that are actually testing and deploying these vehicles. So we don't know a lot about what's going on and how these vehicles are working, and in all too many cases how they're not working. And just kind of one quick example I can give you is that in 2021, NHTSA, I think, again, in a goal to get more information, put out a general standing order that requires companies who are testing these vehicles to send information and safety reports to NHTSA once a crash happens on a public roadway. That general standing order covered 108 different autonomous vehicle manufacturers. Right now on the AV test initiative, there's only 38 total entities that are participating. Of all the states that could be participating, only 19 states have signed up for this AV test. So it's not really giving the full picture on autonomous vehicle operations and really not really giving the public a full picture and all the information that we feel is necessary to make informed regulatory and policy rules for some of these vehicles that certainly are not ready for widespread adoption to this point. So again, not really answering all those questions we have about how AVs work and what needs to be fixed when they're involved in a crash.
Why is this voluntary?
That's a great question. It's something that we continue to question the agency on. My hunch is that if it were mandatory, you might get a lot of legal action from some of the companies that are involved in the AV sector. But if the goal is to get more transparency and more information about these vehicles, this voluntary structure has proven that it simply does not work, and you're not getting the full buy-in from every single company that's out there testing these vehicles. And again, so that just kind of leads to so many unanswered questions, so many unknowns about where and how many of these vehicles are out on the road today.
I'm kind of curious. You mentioned the small number that are listed of entities listed on the AV test system. How many have actually reported any information, and what sort of information have they reported?
Yeah, right. So of those 38 that are listed, only 19 have actually submitted documents to AV test. And kind of looking through the documents they've supported, it tends to be a lot of PR materials and fancy-looking marketing documents that shows how great autonomous vehicles are. It's not actual testing data into how these systems are performing either in testing environments or when they're actually on the road. And that certainly is, I think, one of the main reasons why you see so many of these crashes involving vehicles that are either in driver assist mode or full autonomous vehicles that are in some certain specific locations right now. So do want to get more mandatory reporting, and not just when a crash happens the way it's required now, but throughout the testing and deployment process.
Okay. Well, Jay, we've run out of time, but it's fascinating stuff. Thank you for sharing that information.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
I've been talking with OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. We'll be back in a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine VibraTech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with VibraTech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount. Landline Now. Welcome back. It's time for another of our 50 on 50. 50 significant events from OOIDA's history in celebration of the association's 50th anniversary.
If you've been an observer of politics at all, you've likely heard the term PAC, or PAC, which stands for Political Action Committee. And like many groups that operate in Washington, D.C., OOIDA has a PAC. So what is it and how does it operate? What does it do? Here to explain are OOIDA Chief of Staff Angel Burnell and the association's Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. Angel, Jay, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be with you.
So real quick on kind of a broad thing, what is a PAC and how do they work?
So a PAC is a political action committee, and the goal of a PAC is to provide donations to elect or re-elect political candidates. The OOIDA PAC's goal or mission is to educate lawmakers on issues that are important to small business truckers.
So how did the PAC come about?
The PAC was founded in 1989. We had a law firm in D.C. that put together the PAC and filed all the paperwork. We have since taken over all administration of the OOIDA PAC in-house. I'm actually the PAC treasurer. OOIDA has a membership PAC, and what a membership PAC is a way for our PAC to operate where administrative costs don't come out of the PAC. So 100% of any donations or monies received go to elect or re-elect federal candidates that are working for OOIDA or that support our issues. The benefits, again, our administrative costs don't come out of the PAC, but there is a negative too. A membership PAC can only collect donations from our members. So it does limit our abilities to take donations. It can't be from any trucker. It can't be from just the public. We have to only take PAC donations from the members of our organization.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how the PAC funds are used. And obviously, as you said, Angel, it's to elect or re-elect candidates that support truckers, support OOIDA's various issues. But it's a little bit deeper than that. Can you kind of explain?
Yeah, the primary use of the PAC funds is to continually educate lawmakers on OOIDA positions and different trucking issues. And it's also a way to build relationships with the various elected officials and other candidates. And, the government affairs team and the D.C. office is conducting hundreds of meetings throughout the year with various congressional offices. The majority of those are primarily with congressional staff. The actual elected officials are running all throughout Washington, taking votes, doing all sorts of meetings. A lot of the times we are fortunate to have members participate in the meetings, but the PAC funds give us another opportunity to meet directly with a congressman, congresswoman, a senator, and have a extended, detailed conversation on specific policies. And right now, a lot of that is lining up behind improving truck parking, improving hours of service, fighting back against speed limiters. So really having a chance to talk about a lot of the nuanced and detailed issues that certainly a lot of officials in Washington do not have a great understanding of, but through the PAC and through these meetings, they certainly come out with a much better appreciation of the trucking industry.
Generally speaking, what lawmakers does the PAC focus its donations on?
So we have very thorough conversations about who to target with our PAC dollars. And primarily, we are focusing on officials on transportation and trucking committees of jurisdiction, chairmen of transportation subcommittees and highway safety subcommittees. Then we're looking at certain areas and constituents and states where a lot of our members have an interest. Congressional districts that have a trucking interest and have thousands of OOIDA members in that district. So looking at folks who are going to have influence on key congressional committees in Washington.
One of the things that is kind of interesting about this is the fact, Angel, that this is a bipartisan PAC. And can you explain why that's important?
Absolutely. The OOIDA PAC is bipartisan. That means that we reach out to candidates on both sides of the aisle. The letter behind their name doesn't matter to us. What matters to us is the position that they take with regard to OOIDA issues. We want to support those candidates that support truckers, that support trucking, that have an interest in OOIDA issues, those things that are important to small business truckers.
And one of the other things that I did want to ask you about is how does this compare to other PACs? There's a lot of PACs out there, and OOIDA is one voice in the middle of all this cacophony. I'm wondering if you can kind of explain how it does compare to other PACs.
Yeah, I like to say that the OOIDA PAC is just big enough to be dangerous, and certainly, it really helps having 150,000 members who a lot are just giving whatever they can to the PAC fund, and that helps generate a pretty substantial chunk of money that we can take a lot of time and pick out members to contact through that funds. And when you look at the OOIDA PAC compared to some of the other big players in the trucking industry, we are not the biggest by any stretch, but that allows us to be nimble, really build strong relationships with the members that we target through PAC funds. When you look at some of the other organizations, they are maxing out on pretty much every member in Washington, D.C. So they're kind of taken for granted, I think, a little bit, where if we're spending the money on a candidate, they know the value of that contribution, and really, I think, helps us be a little more selective in who we want to target and really build those relationships with folks who are supporting small business truckers.
And really, to just follow up on what Jay talked about, because of the size of our PAC, it is much smaller than a lot of other industry PACs. We are very deliberate with how we spend our money, meaning we don't just send campaign contributions into somebody that's supporting OOIDA initiatives. We do that, but we send the money to attend an event so that we get face-to-face time without lawmakers so that we can really educate that person. The event is not important. What is important is the time we get to spend without lawmakers so that they know OOIDA and they know our issues.
So it's really about building relationships.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
I'm wondering if you could give us an example of an issue where the PAC was useful in terms of moving the issue forward for truckers.
Yeah, the Trucker Bathroom Access Act that has just been reintroduced this Congress is a great example of that. During the pandemic, we heard about Congressman Troy Nehls, who serves on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, talk about the importance of truckers. And kind of through our background with him being on the committee, we had reached out initially to his office, and using the PAC funds had a chance to really have some great conversations with the congressman personally, talk to him about the challenges and just really the unbelievable aspects that drivers who are picking up or waiting on their loads at a shipping or receiving facility sometimes can't use the bathroom at that facility while they're waiting around. And through those conversations, that kind of has led into actual legislation being introduced in the House of Representatives to help small business truckers who are out on the roads every day.
Okay. I want to thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, Mark.
I've been talking with OOIDA Chief of Staff Angel Burnell and the Association's Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes.
That was another of our 50 on 50. 50 significant events from OOIDA's history in celebration of the Association's 50th anniversary. We'll bring you a new entry every week from now until the actual anniversary celebration.
Our program is produced by the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, the national organization representing America's small business truckers. That's our show. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome.
And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.